My name's Ken Gullo, Senior System Engineer. I've been with Eastern for a few months, since March. And prior to that, I was with Dell, supporting both hyperconverged and storage. And Austin is our sales rep. He'll talk a little bit about Eastern near the end of the presentation. So let's get started. Sam, we're going to go through some of the benefits of VxRail, what's new in VxRail, because there has been some updates last year, and there's always constant updates. VxRail HCI system software, kind of give you a high level of what that's all about. Different platform options, the security, and we'll talk. We'll have the demo around the lifecycle management, and then at the end we'll have that drawing for the barbecue. So first, I'd like to just talk about the core benefits of VxRail, right? We want to unlock the innovation. So as an IT person, you don't want to spend all your time just doing, adding storage or updating and patching things. So as a result, people that have implemented VxRail and hyperconverged find it 68% more efficient on the IT infrastructure teams. And they foster operational freedom where they don't need to do all that pre-testing every time they need to do an update to their infrastructure. So basically, since it is an integrated solution, VMware and Dell EMC basically do 25,000 tests for every major release of the software stack. So you're going to be very confident that when you patch it, and we'll talk more about that, it'll be rock solid, and you won't have to do all that pre-testing, and you know it's going to work. And we evolve predictability, right? It's actually, if you do it in-house, you have that flexibility of the cloud, but 4 times less the cost, right? It's 4 times cheaper than if you actually went to the cloud. Because I've heard customers, they move to the cloud and the costs start exponentially increasing. So actually, you'll have that flexibility of the cloud, but the savings will be there. Now, traditional roles of IT is basically the IT department usually maintains and patches the systems. They always respond to events to keep the system available. So internal user / customer has an issue, you got to try to troubleshoot and fix it. And then a lot of times internal departments have new projects and you need to provision new infrastructure to support those. So that's where most of the time was being taken with the traditional IT. But as the modern era of data comes through right now, data is becoming more and more of a business advantage. If you analyze your data that the customer is getting into their business, they can actually have competitive advantage over their other peers. So IT should be more involved in the business and helping drive new business opportunities. And part of that is not spending as much time on the traditional updating, patching the systems. And then they can identify and execute high-value projects such as machine learning or data gathering and analysis, where they can actually, get some insights on that data. And then they increase the organizational efficiency. So now, if a new project does come on, you have a very flexible system where you can easily add resources to support those new projects without having a lot of time spent doing that. So some of the benefits of HCI adoption out in the world has been more the agility, right? It's more like a public cloud speed. You start out small, you can add nodes as needed within the data center, as opposed to having to go out to the cloud. Scalability, you start small. You can start with a 4-node rail, and that scales up to like 64 nodes for a single cluster. Typically, we don't recommend going that big, but you can have multiple clusters doing different things. And simplicity, right? Operations, software-driven automation, and lifecycle management. And this is VMware, right? 99% of the customers are very familiar with the VMware tool set. So really, there's no learning curve to actually implement this. You already kind of have the skill set in-house. And that overall will improve your efficiency and lower your OpEx. So the HCI trends and continued innovation, right? So this is data center modernization, as opposed to just constantly doing 3-tier where you have servers, storage, and networking, where you need to update each one of them, purchase them, and if they're out of sync and purchase cycles, 1 year you'll be doing the networking, and then next year you'll be doing the storage updates. Edge computing is becoming more in focus now with 5G out there, where we're getting more data at the edge, where this data, gets pretty large, and sending all that back to corporate to be analyzed that would really tax the network. So actually some of that data is now being processed at the edge. So a store was getting a lot of sale information, and they could do predictive analysis on what to maybe deliver to the store the next day, say fresh produce. You could do the analysis at the site and then just send that information back to corporate as opposed to all the raw data. Hybrid cloud acceleration. We'll talk a little bit about that with VCF on VxRail, which allows you to kind of have a hybrid cloud model where you can run some stuff on-prem, move it to the cloud as needed, or move it back. So that's another great feature of the VxRail hyperconverged infrastructure. And cloud native adoption. A lot of customers are starting to look at Kubernetes and Docker, and they're starting to produce software based on that. And what's nice with this platform, as an option, you can add Kubernetes to it and run your traditional workloads right alongside your modern day applications. And you only have to manage one infrastructure, right? And you still have those knowledge and tools. So this continued innovation, the new technologies are constantly being added to the HCI platform. New consumption models where maybe some customers don't want to maintain the VxRail. There are options where it'll be maintained and managed by Eastern or even Dell, where you just consume the resources, right? And new data services, and like I said, AI and ML has been used now a lot. I talk a little bit about that later. To just look at the environment and tell you, hey, there might be something going on that I need to look at. So VxRail has been like one of the, IDC had said it was number one on the HCI platform on the marketplace, and it's still Dell EMC has probably the largest market share and the highest revenue. They have over 10,000 customers. They had over $2 billion in revenue since the inception. This slide, that number is constantly changing, so I'm sure it's well over $2.5 billion by this point. Had over 31% growth rate, and had over 130,000 nodes out in the field. And you can use this in a lot of different areas within your business. You can use it for VDI, which is one of the first start points. A lot of companies started with that. Found it was a very great tool for that. Video analysis, like I mentioned, you could do some analysis on video data, like say at stores looking for shoplifters or things like that. SAP HANA, now last year, the year before, we actually supported 4-socket nodes. So now we can have a higher memory footprint to support HANA on the VxRail. So you can do that. Also AI and ML, we also have support GPUs in these units. And also, like as I mentioned earlier, we do support Kubernetes, so more of a cloud-like environment. So VxRail is quite mature. It's very reliable. Last year we did a study, Dell did a study, and they have found about 6 nines of high availability. They have 4 continuous quarters of sustained use of the system, and they realized at least 92% less downtime versus traditional 3-tier, and that was based on some studies that are at the bottom of this from IDC. I'd just like to pause for a minute. I know we covered quite a bit so far, but does anybody have any questions, or have we seen any questions in the chat?
We don't have anything in the chat right now.
Okay, great. So I'll continue on. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll love to answer them for you. Okay, so next question is what's inside VxRail, right? It's basically, it's a Dell EMC server, right, with the VMware HCI software stack. So you have a vSAN is basically your storage layer on this, so which allows you to use all the disks in each of the servers and combine them into one big storage pool that's used across the nodes, and has replication of the data, so any node fails, the data is safe. Also includes vCenter Server, also the vRealize Suite ready, so you can run vRealize on it. vSphere ready, so if you already have some vSphere, a vCenter server somewhere, you can manage it from there externally if you want. And you can also add on Tanzu, which is the Kubernetes stack, and then also we have the option of VMware Cloud Foundation, which allows for that hybrid cloud. Now, the special sauce within the system, It's the VxRail manager, and this is where it manages the entire lifecycle management of the rail, including the hardware and the VMware piece of it. And this is not, I mean, it is there is a web interface for that, but there's also a plugin for vCenter. So most people never actually go into the VxRail manager. Once you installed your vCenter plugin, you just kind of go from there. And I could show you that during the demo, where we're actually going into the VxRail manager through the vCenter plugin. And you have cloud-based management. There's a SaaS offering that's included with the rail, and I'll go into that a little bit. But with the phone home information that Dell gets back on your, the health of your system, that's pulled into a SaaS portal where you can actually look up all your clusters in your environment. So if you're a larger organization, you have multiple clusters, you can have one pane of glass where you can see the status of all of them in one single pane of glass. Or there's RESTful APIs. So on your software development side, if you have a team, they can even automate some of the provisioning of VMs as needed, right? I'll get that cloud-like experience as opposed to having to going to AWS and swiping a credit card to get what they need. They can programmatically add environments and remove environments as needed for that development. And that allows also automation orchestration. So say you have ServiceNow and they have a ticket system and somebody requests a particular VM, you can even automate that through there. And then you have other ecosystem connectors. Now, let's not forget about data protection. Recover point for VMs is included with it. So you could take advantage of that day one. Say you have a couple clusters in 2 different locations. I can use recover point to replicate to the second location. So I do have like almost a DR capability just built in. And then we also have the VMware vSphere replication. So we'll go through the Dell technology, the VxRail, like the 3 pillars. Basically, we unlock the innovation, right? We empower the developers to optimize for modern applications. So that's what I was talking about, the Kubernetes and Docker. So this does support that, and that's where a lot of application development's going. Even the latest Dell EMC Power Store is based on containers. They did that to make it a lot easier to do updates in the future. So say they need a patch, they only have to update, say, 1 container of it instead of updating the entire array. So you're going to see more and more of that in products out in the world. And you can run cloud native traditional applications on the single infrastructure. As I mentioned, we could have VMs sitting right next to containers on the same VxRail system. And we could expand workloads with thousands of configuration options. So VxRail isn't locked into like 3 different appliances. We have a big array of different options, hardware and CPU, memory, and storage to just kind of customize it for the end user and the customer. So we as Eastern, we can do live optic analysis of your environment and kind of find the most cost-effective solution for your environment, so you don't pay for extra resources that you really don't need. So next, foster operational freedom. This is where we get that non-disruptive upgrades, right? We can go from one validated state to the next. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a later slide. But that saves a lot of trouble. I remember going through change control, and yet you may have to go through change control 3 or 4 times, depending, once for the network, once for the servers, once for the storage, and another one time for the operating system. With this, since it is an integrated solution, you go to change control once, you show them what you're going to do and show them the backup plan, and you're good to go. And a few clicks, you can update your whole environment. And also reduces complexity, right? That's the next thing. It's VMware tools, right? We're all familiar with those. So that's not really a huge learning curve. There's nothing new to learn, and you already kind of understand how to manage that type of environment. And then we can upgrade to new technologies that are having to migrate. That's another cool feature. So say 4 years from now, you want to update some of the rail to a newer technology, new servers, new CPUs. We can easily add new nodes to the cluster, demotion them over, remove the old node, and then you're on your new environment without any real forklift upgrade. And evolve predictability, right? We're reducing risks with this this pre-tested patching. And then we also keep pace VxRail actually is within 30 days of all major releases from VMware. So you know you're going to get the latest updates security-wise and also features. So if you really feel you want to get the new feature that just came out on VMware, you can get it within 30 days of its release, which is really very nice, and you'll feel confident it's going to work when you install it. And like I mentioned earlier, you can seamlessly add multi-generational heterogeneous nodes to a cluster. So say you do need to add another node a year from now to expand the cluster. Maybe you're not removing the old ones. You could just add it and it'll be part of the cluster and you're off to the races. So you just, keep it pretty balanced, close to what you have, and you can actually add it to the cluster. So next, we'll just talk about what was new with VxRail. VxRail version 7 came out last year. There's been like a couple updates since when that happened. HCI Mesh was one of the big announcements where, say I had multiple clusters and one cluster happened to have extra storage on it, and the other cluster needed extra storage. I can use the HCI Mesh where I create a share off the first cluster and use it on the second cluster for needed storage in there without having to buy additional storage for the secondary cluster. Now we also have compression only mode, right? So sometimes data doesn't work well with deduping, and we don't want to waste the CPU cycles for dedupe when we know we're not going to get much dedupe, but we know compression will work. So we could turn that on only, and we save resources on the system and get the benefits of compression. We have encryption for in-transit data, especially like vMotion is all encrypted. There's secure wipe now on the disks, so now you don't really need to pay for extra secure wipe services when you want to return the hardware or dispose of it. And there were some file service enhancements around NFS and SMB, so there's some updates in that area. Now with the VCF on VxRail, VCF 4.1 on Rail, VxRail 7, we have some new remote cluster support. So prior you couldn't add and remove nodes and remote clusters. So now I could do that within the SDDC manager. And then also I can LCM, lifecycle manage the vRealize components. So they've been adding more and more capabilities within VCF. So VCF, when you finally, if you do VCF on VxRail, you'll be managing your VxRail through VCF. And it actually talks to the VxRail manager. So they've expanded those capabilities. And if you feel like you want to stay on 4.7, there are some updates there to help, give you some improvements if you're not ready to go to VxRail 7, and automated LCM of Optane P memory if you happen to implement that, right? There's some lifecycle management around that, and power on for clustering. So I could pause again. Are there any questions in the queue?
Does the VxRail infrastructure help in simplifying remote management?
Remote management, yeah. Well, we do have a SaaS. There's a SaaS portal where you can actually get into that through a web browser and manage your whole, see your whole environment. But basically, it's just a web interface. If you can get to your web interface, you can manage the VxRail or vCenter or the VxRail manager. So I think that's as good as well as you can get, as long as you get into your firewall from outside, use your VPN in to actually have direct access to it. But you can get an overview. So say you're at home working remote or in the field, then you could use the SaaS interface. It's an external portal, and you could actually see your environment from there. So hopefully that answers your question. And I will go a little bit into that later on the SaaS multi-cluster management platform. So next, just talk about the VxRail software. So the lifecycle management within VxRail ensures 60% over 68% improvement on the IT infrastructure team. So like I mentioned earlier, that does save a lot of time in terms of maintaining the environment. And it reduces downtime, right? Unplanned outages. I've seen, you do updates and you never know what's going to happen and you may have to back out of it. So you may wind up with some things that conflict, maybe a driver for firmware for a particular card conflicts with the operating system, right? And then you wind up with unplanned outages as a result of something like that. So as a result, from studies, we found that VxRail, actually you wind up with 88% fewer outages. And also budget efficiencies, right? It's about 40, 50% cheaper than doing it in the public cloud. You know, they charge you per egress charges for, you know, pulling stuff out, and plus the instances and everything else. So it starts adding up. And 50%, 52% lower of operations compared to refreshing legacy environments. So rather than go back and continue with your 3-tier, you can actually cut 52% of your operating costs and use that efforts from your IT staff to actually support the business, and actually create some new cool stuff around AI and machine learning. So this is benefits of the unique benefits of LCM. What's nice is we could skip from one version to the next. So say I don't want to update every 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. I could wait maybe once a year, but I could skip all the intermediate updates. So that's what's really sweet about the VxRail. I don't need to go in sequential order to do an update. And like I mentioned earlier, they do over 25,000 hours of testing per release to make sure it's rock solid. And that's between the hardware, firmware, and the VMware stack, right? It's fully optimized. And they, like I said, you don't have to go in sequence, which is another major thing. And we can have a mix of different nodes in the cluster, and you'll be able to update the entire cluster without having any downtime. And single support, single site, single point of support, which is another thing I didn't touch upon yet, but basically you just make one phone call to Dell EMC, and if it's a VMware problem, they'll help you, and you don't need to make another call for VMware or even the hardware. It's all one single call, and you won't have any of that finger pointing you see with multi-vendor solutions when you have multiple companies involved. So here's what we were talking about earlier, was the SaaS multi-cluster management. This is a web portal with the phone home data, as long as you set the system up to phone home. And what's nice, if you do set the phone home, and if Dell does do monitoring of it, if they start saying, hey, this hard drive or this component is about to fail, they will call you and then actually send you the part and send somebody out to fix it, right? So that way it'll prevent downtime also. So that was another benefit with the rail, with the phone home capabilities. But a lot of that, all that data goes, once you opt into the SaaS multi-cloud management, you get to see this in this web portal, right? And then it does present, so if you go in there, you get health scores. And if say you see like a low score, you can drill down and it will present some remediation guidelines on best practices to fix an anomaly, for example. If you saw an anomaly in your environment, you could drill into that and see what's going on. So what happens is it'll get a baseline of your environment and also other environments, just to get a feel for what good looks like. And if it goes beyond that good normal, it'll become an anomaly, and it will let you know, right? Because that might be something that might be an early warning sign of a potential issue. Or maybe it's going to become a new norm, but at least you know that something's going on and you can look into it. It also does predictive analysis on, like, say, storage, or CPU, and things like that. As we add more workload to the environment, it will say, hey, you know, at the rate you're going, maybe in 3 months, you may want to add another node or more storage to the environment because you're going to run out. So that's another nice thing. So you don't run into that where it fills up and then you're like, oh, then you're rushing to fix the issue. This way, at least you know in advance, hey, I better plan in 2 months, maybe I'll add another node to the environment or add some more drives to the existing systems to support the needs of the customer. Also, there's an enhanced automated lifecycle management that allows you to actually manage lifecycle management across all your clusters in the global environment. And that's one of the features. This pretty much included with the rail. Some of the more enhanced lifecycle management, maybe a little bit extra, but not much. But when you get into the portal, you can actually look at a global view of a map of the whole world, and then you can see where your clusters are. You see there, you have like US and along with Alaska. And if you click on say the United States, you'll see like, hey, I have one in New York and I have one in Texas. And then you could drill down onto each of those particular clusters and actually look at them and see what's going on. but you also, from here, you can also do pre-stage, do pre-checks for system updates, and then you could actually launch updates from this portal for around your different clusters. So that's kind of your single pane of management for the global environment. Now there's many platform options, so that's got a, Dell has a number one like server platform in the industry, and they got a lot of different options depending what you're trying to do. And us at Eastern will figure out which system makes best financial sense and business for your business. But last year, it's kind of interesting. A durable series came out, and that allows, these are more industrial grade servers where, say, it's on a drilling rig and you got a lot of vibration. So it's designed for those industrial areas. So that was another. So if you need to put some of those edge locations and collect data, say on a drilling rig, you can do that with VxRail and feel confident that the systems won't fail because of dust and other factors. So we'll talk a little bit about the VxRail VMware Cloud Foundations. This is pretty much recommended. It's been, co-engineered with Dell EMC to be running on VxRail. I mean, that's kind of the recommended platform for Cloud Foundations versus trying to build it yourself. Just makes it a lot easier, so you could just build your VxRail. VMware Cloud Foundation also interfaces into VCF on AWS, so we can actually have a hybrid cloud between here and AWS and be able to move workloads seamlessly between on-prem and off-prem as a real hybrid cloud environment. So VCF is it's a really nice solution if you're really looking to do a hybrid cloud and you have a relatively large environment, and even with like containers, maybe heavy development on site, and then you launch them out into the cloud when you're ready to put them in production, right? So you have that ability. So it's full stack integration. You got the future-proof from future-proof for VMware Cloud. Same thing here, single vendor support, right? And automated end-to-end lifecycle, as I mentioned, with the SDDC Manager of Cloud Foundation. It updates everything, all the parts of Cloud Foundation, the VMware, and all the VxRails, and it actually talks to the VxRail manager directly. So that's how that kind of works with the lifecycle management. We're getting close to the demo part, but I want to just talk about security because that's been in the news constantly. A lot of companies have been getting hacked and things. Eastern does have a good security practice, so if you need any assistance around security or advice, we could do some analysis for you and give you some recommendations. But the VxRail is FIPS certified. It's got EAL 2+ certification, so it is quite secure. And security is built in from the beginning between the VMware and the hardware. You have trusted platform modules and secure boot of the actual system. So there's a lot of security you can implement around VxRail to make sure they're rock solid around security. So I just wanted to give you a little taste that this is a very secure system. Okay, so I guess we can start the demo. It's a quick demo showing the lifecycle management of Rail. Okay, so this is your vSphere client, the vCenter, and you're in there, and this is the plugin for VxRail. So here we got the VxRail manager at the bottom, listed as one of the VMs. So first step, usually, before you do any update to a system, you should do some snapshots. So first we'll click on all the systems that need snapshots, and we'll just go through one of them, and we'll take a quick snapshot of that. But any of the other appliances in your environment, you should do a snapshot of them along with the other VMs that are important. So next we go to monitor, right? We want to make sure our environment's healthy, right? So we look here and we make sure all of our nodes are up and happy and they're all green with green check marks. So we know we're in good shape to do an update, right? So next we would want to go check configuration and see currently we're at VxRail 4.7, right? And we're going to try to get this up. We're going to get this up to VxRail 7.0. So if we had the dial home set up, we would click on the internet updates, and then we would see a list of recommended updates. We could, do a refresh, and we'll see the latest update. We can click on it and download it. In this case, this demo system is not connected. They didn't configure the phone home, so we can actually go to solve and download it manually. So we'll go here to local updates, and we'll go browse our local system. And here's a full package. It's about 9 gigs. So that has everything, the firmware, the VMware, the vCenter, all that's bundled into one update. So now we're going to open it, and it's going to download it. And it takes about a couple minutes. But this is all sped along, so it may take a little bit longer, depending on your network, to download 9 gigs. And here we go. So once it's downloaded, it will unpack it, right? We can extract all the bundles that were part of that zip file. And that could take a few minutes. So everything will be unzipped, and then the next step, it'll show us what we unzipped and what versions we're looking at. There we go. So see, we got version 7. It's showing, hey, the Rail Manager is going to go to version 7 of the software. It's also showing the BIOS levels and what's getting updated there. So it gives you all the versions that are gonna be updated, and also showing you the reboots. Right. So what's gonna do? It's gonna go through each of the nodes. It's gonna put in demotion the workloads off, put in maintenance mode, and update the node. So let's continue with the update. All right. So let's do an update now. Since for the demo. Have to schedule it, and then we're going to put in all the credentials we need for all the key components of the system, including the VxRail Manager and the vCenter administrator password. And then at the bottom, we'll put in all the VCSA appliance and PSC account password, and also there'll be a temporary IP just for this upgrade, because they're going to get rid of the PSC. It's going to be integrated in the vCenter. So we need a temporary IP for that. So we hit next, and now we hit finish, and it will tell us we're going to go to version 7, and it's going to take about 5.1 hours. So I'll see you in none. Just joking. It'll speed it along and just go through it very quickly for us. So as you see, it's going to start doing the upgrade, and you're going to look over here. You're going to start seeing some of them going in the maintenance. It's going to create a new version of the VxRail Manager, and then it's going to rename the old one to be Legacy, and then shut it off. And then we have the new VxRail Manager. It's going to do that with all the appliances, including the vCenter server. And now it's going through each of the nodes, demotioning things off, and putting in maintenance mode and updating everything, the firmware and the VMware. So this is speeding everything along. We're doing about 5 hours worth of effort in a few minutes, but this kind of gets typical, goes through each and every single node one by one. And then at the end, it'll indicate, hey, we're at version 7, right? We got everything updated. It shows you what was updated. The manager's at 7. The ESX is at version 7. And then also it gives you a little warning. This is one thing, just to remind you, you go back to the go back to your login at VMware, and then get the latest software keys for version 7. After you do the upgrade, you're under maintenance. It's no big deal. You just download the keys and apply them to the system. So that's pretty much the LCM and how easy it is. It will take a little bit longer, as you showed there. It showed approximately 5 hours, but typically, the bigger the environment, it'll take a little bit longer. But this is something you can even schedule off hours, and wake up in the morning when it's done.
This is Austin King. I represent the sales team here at Eastern. So I'm just going to go quickly through the value of Eastern. I know this is primarily for VxRail in the presentation and the demo, but here's a list of our top partners and solutions that we can provide services around. So this is kind of just a timeline here of how we work with our clients and our customers, and we're there every step of the way. So go to the next slide. Yeah, and again, this is just a high-level overview of the different capabilities we have and services we can provide around. You saw the the partner list and vendor list that we had, but you see network and security here, virtualization, digital transformation, and all of these different areas and services revolve around those partners you saw before. And we have plenty of experience at the enterprise level and at the commercial level with all of these areas of services that we can provide. So thank you everybody for joining, who joined the call. And please feel free to reach out for any questions to myself or Ken. Our contact info will be listed at the end of the presentation. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Thank you.